My name is Ahmed Fathi. I'm representing Masr العربية of Egypt. I'm holding right here is the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances, which was signed in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And up to date, there is over 94 countries are member to it, and there is more. And also referring to the General Assembly Resolution 47/133 of 1992. If I may quote a couple of articles, and then I will come with my question.
Maybe just one excerpt rather than a couple of
No one shall be subjected to enforced disappearances. Part 2, no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, internal political instability, or any other public emergency may be invoked as a justification for enforced disappearances. In Egypt, as a country going through transformation after the Arab Spring, an Egyptian NGO issued a report back in May, and they have counted over 216 cases of enforced disappearances, which remains 146 unresolved. Several of these cases involved arresting people with no warrants and taking them into police stations. However, the government records show no indication of such incidents. NGOs in general in Egypt these days are faced with harsh measures of control, obstruction of performance work, safety of the NGO workers are always at risk of being apprehended, of being harassed, in addition to the usual harassment for the independent media. My question is, what's the working group position on these new cases in Egypt, which was not the case for many decades, and now it's surfacing very strongly under the current regime? And what's the jurisdiction of the International Convention of the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances and previous General Assembly resolutions in this regard can provide for those abductees and their families and loved ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fahir, for your Fahir for your Fathia for your question. With regards to new cases, as I mentioned to your colleague, unfortunately, I cannot comment on specific cases because of their confidential nature. But as you can see from our annual report, we receive a great number of cases from Egypt, and it's a very contemporary problem. We're receiving current claims with frequency as it appears in our annual report. With regards to the jurisdiction of our working group, we do not limit ourselves to countries that have ratified the convention you just referred to. I'd have to verify if Egypt has ratified the convention. I don't think so. But our working group's competence does not depend on the convention. It is a broader competence which is based on General Assembly resolutions, including the 1992 declaration which we both referred to earlier. But the obligations contained in these instruments constitute norms of customary international law and are binding on all states, regardless of the ratification of certain treaties. Actually, if you look at the Rome Statute regarding ICC, you will see that enforced disappearances is included. If you look at the ICRC study with regards to rules of humanitarian law which constitute customary international law, you'll see that enforced disappearances as well are clearly prohibited under customary international law. So our working group does act upon this legal basis and is competent to receive claims with regards to all countries and to engage in other procedures. As I just mentioned to you, we do receive claims with regards to Egypt. However, with regards to cases, I should recall, as I just mentioned when I was discussing this with Matthew earlier, that our mandate with regards to cases is more of a humanitarian mandate, to the extent that our objective is to locate a person or find out his fate. It is not to attribute state responsibility, as other mechanisms within the UN will do, including the Committee on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, which is competent to look at cases regarding alleged violations of the convention. Of course, this requires that the state has, one, ratified the convention, which is not the case for Egypt, and has also recognized the committee's competence to receive cases. The committee, once those two conditions are fulfilled, can attribute state responsibility on allegations of violations of the treaty. Our competence is not to do so, it's more to locate a person. Now, we do have other mechanisms that we are able to use with regards to those situations. In addition to cases, we have the general allegation procedure, which allows the working group to receive information from civil society actors with regards to a broader general situation of human rights violations, and more specifically of enforced disappearances. And in those cases, we will contact state authorities and inform them of our concern for receiving credible information on certain elements related to enforced disappearances, and then ask a series of questions to the state in order to engage in this dialogue. So there's this general allegation, which we can use as a procedure for all states, not, as I mentioned, to only those who have ratified the convention. And then, of course, there are other broader mechanisms, like I was mentioning earlier, the country visit mechanism, which allows us to go at the invitation of a state in the country and speak with state officials directly and with civil society actors, and then follow up on the recommendations that we've made in this regard.